write it in. 3.2b. Complex numbers continued. Complex numbers continued. Continued 3.2b. So, in your notes, this is what I want you to write. This right here. Put this stuff in your notebooks. So, I is going to be I. So I is the square root of -1, and that's going to be I. You cannot simplify that anymore. I squared is equivalent to -1. I to the third power is equivalent to -I. I to the fourth is equivalent to +1. Put this in your notes. I to the fifth is equal to I. I to the sixth power is equal to -1. I to the seventh power is equal to -I. I to the eighth power is equal to 1. Put this in your notes. I to the ninth equals I to the 10th equals -1, I to the 11th equals -I to the 12th equals 1. Is there a pattern in here? Absolutely. There's a pattern. Oh, look at that. I. -1, -1, -1. -I. +1, +1. I wonder what 9, 10, 11, 12, I to the 13th power. I wonder what I to the 13th. This should go in your notes right here. You don't need anything else, but that right there should go in your notes. But I to the 13th power, if you see the pattern, I to the 13th power just continues with this. It's going to be I. And I to the 14th is going to be equivalent to -1. I to the 15th is -I. That's an I. I to the 16th power is equal to +1. And I to the 17th will be back to I. So the only four values you get are these four. I, -1, -I, +1. That's it. So when you're working with the value of I, the imaginary number I, if you have any exponent other than 1, you know it can be simplified because that exponent's not 1, so it's simplified to -1. That exponent is not a 1, so this is going to be simplified to -I. That exponent's not a 1, so that becomes a +1, and so on. And these are not, if that's this is not a this is not a 1, that can be simplified. Not a 1, it's not a 1, it's not the number 1, it's not the number 1. Here's the number 1, so that stays as I. So if you have I to any power other than 1, you know it can be simplified. Okay? So we're going to use that on today's assignment. Here we go right here, number 37. We're going to take 3I times the quantity -5 plus I, in parentheses. So distribute, this times this is -15I. Okay, right there. This stuff times this stuff is 3I squared. Okay, I, that cannot be simplified. Ooh, but this exponent is not a 1, so that can be simplified because I squared is equal to -1. So I squared is the same thing as a -1. So this part doesn't change. That cannot be simplified, but what's 3 times a -1? Oh, -3. So this is our answer. Oh, but wait a minute. We don't write our answer complex numbers. We don't write complex numbers like that. The real portion comes first. The imaginary part comes second. So you don't write it this way. You write it that way. This is the answer. The imaginary part comes second. Okay. Here's another question. Okay. For the complex numbers, you're going to multiply this mess. This is number 39b. It's similar to 39. It's not the exact same thing, but it's similar. We are going to this times this, and this times this is 8. This times this is a -4I. Then we take these and multiply those. This is a -6I. This times this, positive 3i squared. Okay, these are like terms, combine those. That's a minus 10i plus 3i squared. Oh, looks like we're done. No, we're not done. Can that be simplified? Nope. Can that be simplified? Nope. Can that be simplified? No. I raised to power of anything other than 1. I squared. I wonder what I squared would be equivalent to do. Boom, right there. I squared is the same thing as -1. These are the only 4 things you need to memorize. And know that I raised to a power of 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 20 or 57 or 156 or 2,575 can be simplified. You know it's going to be one of these answers. Okay? I squared is -1. So I squared. So we're going to write that as I squared is a -1. And that becomes -3. Now, these are like terms. Those we can combine. 8 minus 3 is 5 minus 10i. So, there you go. That is the answer right there. This is the answer. Okay. Over here, 43b. B means it's similar to 43, but it's not the exact same thing. So, is this junk squared? Here I'm going to show you a mistake a lot of people do. Oh, 2 squared is 4. 5i squared is 25i squared. Done! Man, that's such an easy mistake to make. Please don't make that. It's this quantity written 2 times. Once. Twice. Now we're going to this times this, and this times this. Just 2 and 2. 2 times 4. They're getting at 4 terms over here. This times this is 4. This times this is a positive 10i. This times this is a positive 10i. This times this is a positive 25i squared. Those are like terms. There we go. Wait, this is I to some power other than 1. Here's I to the first power. That cannot be simplified, but that exponent's not a 1, so we know that can be simplified. If only there's some place that told us what I squared was equal to. If only there's a place I squared. I wonder what I squared is equal to. Oh yeah, it's right there. Use that. So 4 plus 20i plus 25. I squared is a -1. So that becomes a -25 plus 20i. This and this are like terms. So those become a -21. And that's a 20i. And you have your real portion first and your imaginary portion second. Fin. It's complete. Ooh. Here, let me do this one right away because this is along the same lines. Okay. This question right here. So I just want to see, since my screen right here, I can't see what's on the screen, but I can see parts of it. I can only see parts of it. This pen and that, I can't, there I can see my finger. I can see parts. Okay, that's in the screen. So we're going to do the same as this times this, that, and then that, and that. This times this is 6i. This times this is positive 2i squared. This is plus 3i squared. And this is positive I to the 3rd power. Okay. I squared. I squared is a -1. I squared is a -1. Whoops. -1. I to the third. Oh, man, I to the third. That's not a 1, so if there's only some place we knew where I to the third was equal to. I wonder what I to the third power is equal to. It's equal to -I. Okay. Right here. There's I to the third, there's I to the fourth. So now we have 6i, that's a -2. That's a -3. That's a -I. Those are like terms. These are like terms. That combines to give us a -5. This combines to give us a +5i. And you're done. You have to get used to using these here. I, -1, -I, +1. Those are the only 4 values you get. Okay. Now we're actually going to have an equation. So here's an equation, and we have to solve the equation. So the variable is x, it's on that side of the equation. The value of a is 1, the value of c is 16, b is 0. Ooh, b is 0, so always square roots. So we're going to subtract 16 on both sides of the equation. X squared equals -16. And now we take this x squared equals -16. X is still on the left side of the equal sign. The opposite of squaring is square rooting. So now we have x equals square root of -16. And when we have a negative inside the square root, oh, wait, stop, just made a mistake. There's a very common mistake people make all the time. Here's an equation. We took the square root of both sides. Make sure you put a plus or minus. That's such an easy mistake to make. People make that mistake over and 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 over. Stop. Okay. Now we can take this negative outside. We get plus or minus I times the square root of 16. Or is this in? Yeah. Square root of 16 becomes, square root of 16 is 4, so you get 4 plus or minus 4i. Okay? Plus or minus 4i. X is equal to plus or minus 4i. You get an imaginary number. And I know I'm going to get that because here x squared equals some negative number. That tells me right away, if I see a negative number here, the answer is going to be imaginary because of that negative. What about this one? Question 53. Okay, this is not in standard form, but a would be a 2 if I brought that over. That'd be positive 34 positive, so that'd be 2x squared plus 40. X squared plus 40 equals 0. A is 2, B is 0, C is 40. Hey, B is 0. Square roots. Solve by square roots. Okay? So X is going to stay on this side. Everything that's not an X, other side is the equation. Divide both sides by dos. We get x squared equals -20. X squared equals a negative number. I know the answer is going to have an I in it. When x squared is equal to some negative number, we know we're going to have the value of I. Get it? I got it. Aye, Captain. Okay. Let's take the square root. Oops. Opposite of squaring is square rooting. X equals square root of -20. And then the negative, you want to stop again. Don't forget this. When you take the square root of both sides of an equation, don't forget to put the plus or minus. Very common boo-boo. Now this negative inside, take that negative out, so we get x equals plus or minus the negative. There we go. The negative comes outside, becomes an I, and we have a 20. There. Square root of 20, so if I can't go that way, and there's no room on the paper, I'm going to factor tree this way. 4 times 5 is 20, that's prime. That's not prime. 2 times 2 is 4, those are prime. So we have x equals plus or minus I. There's a 2, there's a 2, there's a 5. There's a 2, there's a 2, there's a 5. Is there identical pair inside the radical? This is the radical. Is there identical? Yes, there's identical pair inside the radical. One of those 2's goes outside. So plus or minus 2i, and what stays inside? The 5. So plus or minus 2i times the square root of 5. Bin. And the last question. Question 60. We have to solve for this. What does it say here? 60. Find the zeros of the function. So the question states, find the zeros of the function. Hey, solve it. Find the zeros of the function when this is 0. When this is 0, solve. Okay. The variable is x. This in standard form. A is 1, B is 0, C is 98. When B is 0, solve by square roots. So subtract 98 on both sides of the equation. And we get, and that. Okay, let me see here. Is this in frame? Oh yeah, it's in frame. So most people like to see it written this way. The variable first followed by, on the other side of the equation, the constant. Oh, x squared equals a negative number. I'm going to have the letter I involved. There's the red pen. How to go to purple? X equals square root of negative 98. Don't forget that plus or minus right there. Okay, now make sure to take out that I. Plus or minus I, square root of 98. Now you do a factor tree of 98. 49 times 2, that's prime, that's 7 times 7, prime. So we get plus or minus I. We have a 2, we have a 7, we have another 7. Is there identical pair? Yes, there's an identical pair. One of those 7's comes outside. Plus or minus is still there. The I is still there. One of those 7's came outside. Inside you have a 2. And this is your answer. Oh, I should say X. This is your answer. X equals plus or minus 7i root 2. Okay, well, there you go, guys. So good luck. This stuff is a little more difficult than the stuff on 5 through 30. Have a good time. Bye, guys.